Hello and welcome. You're listening to Nature's a Hoot with Tom Morath and Hannah Shaw, the wildlife podcast from the Conservancy Trust. As you know, we're all about birds of prey at the Trust, but birds don't live alone, they're part of a whole ecosystem. So the podcast is our chance to take a more general look at wildlife beyond birds.
If you're itching to know more about biodiversity or barn owls, or eager to explore the worlds of woodlands and wetlands, basically, if you like wildlife, you're in good company.
And you don't need to be an expert, we've got that covered as we're joined by some of the greatest voices in conservation to tell us more about what's happening right now in the wild world around us. Coming up in this month's episode, we'll be joined by a very special guest, zoologist and science communicator Sophie Pavelle, to talk about everything from water boatmen to beavers.
Sophie's passion for nature and finding quirky ways to communicate it is infectious, so stay tuned to hear our chat with her a little later on. So Hannah, it's been a month of daffodils pushing up to the grasses and frogs spawning in ponds, well in some people's ponds, but not mine. Have you spotted anything cool wildlife-wise recently?
Yeah, lots of things. I'm very excited about spring. I love it because I can just get out and start getting my nerdy books out and start brushing up on all the wildflowers and trees and stuff. My best one, and I think you were with me, was the first bumblebee that I saw of the year. Do you remember?
Do you know, I've never seen anybody get more excited about seeing a bumblebee than you did that day. We were sat and having a socially distanced meeting about Nature's a Hoot, and Hannah just squealed with delight from the other side of the patio. It was great, and it's really exciting, isn't it, when we've kind of been in the depths of winter and cold and wet to suddenly see a bumblebee.
Yeah,
it's an exciting moment in the year.
Yeah, I was really excited because I'd seen everybody posting on Twitter about their first bumblebees, and I was just really excited to see my first bumblebee. So that was very nice.
Well, that was like me about frog spawn. Everybody's like, "Oh, we've got frog spawn in the pond," and if you remember, I had that frog in the pond last year, and I was like, "Well, surely they know where it is now."
Yeah.
You know, they've got over the fact that next door neighbour put in a great big fence, brand new fence, and I've really sneakily dug a little hole underneath a part of the fence.
Did you?
And I don't think they've noticed. Yeah, I have. I don't think they've noticed. So I'm hoping wildlife can get into my garden a bit more easily. But yeah, I've not got any frog spawn in my pond, because you started a little pond as well, didn't you? Have you got anything?
Yeah,
in yours?
we've got a pond. I've sort of done the same. I haven't dug any really blatant holes, but I have sort of where there's bits, because our garden is so uneven. But we're the same. It's a new build, so we've got a huge fence around it, which is horrible, and it means that things can't really get in and out other than birds and invertebrates. But yeah, so I've sort of strategically left a few small gaps, so I think amphibians could get in, but no, sadly no frogs yet. No frog spawn.
But you put a new tree in your garden, didn't you?
I did. I put a new tree in. Yeah, I put a new tree in. It's a white beam. We're trying to sort of stick to native species, and it's only 7 feet tall. And after putting the tree in, we've had goldfinches every day, and we didn't have them at all before. And we've had a pair of blue tits come and prospect as well. And so we've moved our we had a bird box that wasn't in a very good position, so we've moved that into a better position, and very, very hopeful that the blue tits might move into the bird box.
Ooh, that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, well, we've had the same thing. We bought a bird box and we popped it on the fence, and I'm kind of thinking there's not really anywhere kind of high enough, and maybe that's part of the problem. But we have had a blue tit occasionally come and stick his or her head in and have a little look, but nothing more than that. Oh, there you go. Now, Hannah, I heard that we had some good news from one of our conservation projects, the one in Pakistan. Are you able to tell us a bit more about the vulture project there and why we're excited?
Yes, I am particularly excited about this project at the moment, just because it's been going for quite a few years, but it seems to have picked up in the last couple of years. So the project is to conserve vultures in Pakistan, and it's part of a whole. We work with WWF Pakistan on the ground in the country, and it's part of a whole sort of consortium called SAVE, which is Saving Asia's Vultures from Extinction, and that's across a few different countries in South Asia to conserve critically endangered vultures there. And I'm sure many of our listeners will know what the problem was in Asia. Was in the late 1990s, there was a massive crash, more than 99% of vultures in that area, due to a veterinary drug called diclofenac. And the veterinary drug is used to treat lameness in cattle. And so when those cattle then die, that diclofenac stays in the system, and it's an important food source for vultures, the cattle carcasses, and so it was killing the vultures basically, and it caused a huge population crash. Now what we're doing is we have a sort of two-pronged approach to the project there. We have what are called vulture safe zones, and we have a breeding centre. Vulture safe zones are basically do what they say on the tin, really. They are an area that is kept safe from those veterinary drugs that are damaging to vultures. So it's an area that's kept safe for vultures. So we have one vulture safe zone, and we have another, what's called a provisional or potential vulture safe zone, that we're hoping will sort of come into fruition this year. So there's sort of monitoring in that area now, working with the government and working with the authorities there to try and get that area properly demarcated as a vulture safe zone. And then our second prong, which is the breeding centre, which is the bit that I'm most excited about, is a captive population of Asian white-backed vultures, which is one of the main species there, and it's doing really, really well, and it's done really well this year. So we've had 3 new chicks this year, which is very, very exciting. Yeah. And I'm only just allowed to announce the 3rd chick because we like to wait 30 days, just to make sure that everything is okay. So we've had basically one a month since December. So December, January and February. Yeah, and all 3 are doing well, parents doing really well, which is brilliant because the colony there is, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's about 25 adults. So it's pretty good going to get 3 viable. Obviously, not all those adults are paired up as well, so it's great to get 3 chicks. And these are birds that eventually, once the area is safe, will be able to be released back into the wild, which is also so very cool. Exciting.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, having chicks from like any of the birds that are here on site, people will know that we breed birds here at the Trust as well. It's always exciting to have chicks. Like they are, whether it's a vulture or an owl, they are really cute. But I cannot stress enough how exciting it is when it's all for the reason that it's a critically endangered bird. This is a bird that we're really, really worried about the state of their population in the wild. And we've got 3 precious baby vulture chicks, and it's just, it makes everything we do worthwhile, doesn't it? It's so exciting.
Last month, you might remember, we introduced a new element to Nature's a Hoot. It's called the Matter of Fact Challenge. And the challenge involves you and me, Tom, going head to head each month to come up with the best fact in the chosen category.
That's right. And now there's a little matter of last month's challenge to clear up. Now, last month's category was...
Best Animal Adaptation.
Right. And I'm very proud to say that it was indeed my yellow-billed hornbill that won that particular challenge. Yeah, I just pipped me to the post there. And how did I win, you might ask? Well, I won by votes. Each month, those of you who are listening can cast your vote for who you think has come up with the best fact via our Instagram stories or via a poll on our Twitter page.
Yeah. So I reckon there's everything to play for this month. So shall we get on with the Matter of Fact Challenge?
Let's do it.
This month's Matter of Fact Challenge is...
Best Animal Parent. Now, Hannah, you went first last time, so I'm going to jump straight in there with mine.
Okay.
I think we should stay pretty close to home, really, I suppose, in terms of our parenting skills. As human beings, we're not bad, but I want to raise you the orangutan. Those incredible animals that we see wandering through the rainforest treetops of Borneo and Sumatra. They're incredible animals in their own right, but their parental skills just seem amazing. They seem to outweigh almost anything else in the animal kingdom, I think. They have, other than human beings, the longest childhood of any animal. So they actually have a childhood, a period to grow up where they live with their parents. And during that time, they learn to eat and sleep and protect themselves within that environment. And their mothers, in particular, it's important to stress this, the dads seem like they're absolutely rubbish, so maybe that goes against me. But I think the mums are so good that it brings up the entire species. Apparently, the fathers just kind of like meander off when the deed is done, and they don't come back.
Right.
So forget that.
Mine is all about the mum as well.
Oh God, yeah, we've been very matriarchal today, but that's all right because the mothers are so good with the orangutans. We've all seen those images, haven't we, of the infant orangutans clinging to their mums for the first couple of years. They're so cute.
Yeah.
And then as they get to
so
about
how long
5
do they
years
stay
old,
with
they
their
learn
mum
to
then?
come back. Well, they stay very close to their mums until they're about 10 years old, would you believe? They become sexually mature at 12 years old, but they don't start really getting independent until after their 10th birthday. And get this is even nicer. So they become kind of sexually mature at about age 12. They go and find their own partners, and even at that point, when they're around 15 or 16 years old, they still come back and visit their mum. So yeah, orangutan gets my vote.
Okay, well, it's a good one. I must say, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
So I am diving into the marine world.
Ooh.
And mine is more about the care of the young when they're very, very young, to make sure that they have the absolute best start in life, and the dedication of this parent, specifically the mother as well, is pretty epic. It is the giant Pacific octopus, which is actually the largest octopus in the world. It is a ginormous 68 kilograms, which is about 150 pounds.
Wow.
And can be up to 6 meters across. So when they stretch the tentacles out, can be up to 6 meters across. But interestingly, this animal only lives for about 2 to 3 years. And the sort of purpose of the female octopus's life is to successfully breed, and they just do that once in their life. And they can lay, I found a few different figures, but they can lay up to 400,000 eggs in one go.
Oh my God.
In what's termed a super brood of eggs. And then, being this wonderful mother, she lays her eggs, and then she stays with the eggs and she cleans them by blowing nutrient-rich water over them and keeping them oxygenated, moving her tentacles around them. And she doesn't feed herself at all during this time, and it can be up to 6 months that she does this for. She's completely dedicated to these eggs, doesn't feed at all herself. Until the eggs then hatch, and then the little miniature tiny octopuses go off and start their lives, and then the mother dies. So she just dedicates her quite a large proportion of her life to looking after her up to 400,000 eggs and giving them a really good start in life. Oh. So yeah, the giant Pacific octopus.
Wow, that's amazing. They could make that into a movie, couldn't they? It's like, it's just so epic. I've got my work cut out this month. It's 1-0 to me so far, but remember, it's up to you as our listener, wherever you're listening to Nature's a Hoot, to vote for which fact you think best fits the bill of best animal parent.
Yep, so head over to our Instagram stories or our Twitter feed to cast your vote.
We will, of course, be revealing the winner of this episode's Matter of Fact Challenge next time. We are so excited now to introduce you to this month's guest, Sophie Pavelle, who joined us to chat about her work in science communication and about how humour can play a huge part in helping everybody to connect with wildlife.
Sophie's writing has featured in Country Farm magazine, BBC Wildlife magazine, and her work. Start again. Sophie's writing has featured in Country Farm magazine, BBC Wildlife magazine, and her work on digital communication is now published in a scientific study. And she is also bringing out her new book, which is very exciting.
Yes, we heard about her new book that's coming out later next year. So here we go then. Let's meet Sophie now.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Hi Sophie, welcome. Brilliant to have you on. It's really nice to chat to you. So where did your love of wildlife begin and what inspired you to take this path?
I'm afraid it's a bit of a boring answer, really. I mean, there was never like a kind of eureka moment where I was just like, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. I've just always been outdoorsy, adventurous. My parents were both very keen on my brother and I having a very sort of wholesome, outdoorsy upbringing. And so let's just totally make the most of everything that we've got on our doorstep. So we've got Dartmoor, we've got the Jurassic Coast, we've got lovely countryside, the River Exe. So it's just a very lovely childhood that was based, outdoors, on the water, in the water, camping. I think it's just become part of my life, really, in a very sort of non-forced, unintended way. I think, before the whole conversation around the natural world and mental health and green space became really apparent and important, I think my parents just instinctively recognised that that was important for our upbringing. And so I think that's really formed who I am and where my interests lie. Our parents, again, I hate them a lot, really, were just very focused on doing what we enjoy at uni, or whether we wanted to go to uni or not, and not kind of what we felt would give us a good job. My brother was very much, I want to be a doctor. I really, really love the idea of looking after people. And now he's a doctor in A&E and is amazing. Wow. Whereas I've always been very much like, I just don't know what I want to do. Like, I'm interested in so much, but I just don't really know where to channel that interest. So I decided to do zoology at university because that degree was just very broad, and it's been kind of the pathway for many people who inspire me, in this industry. Often a lot of them have done zoology, and it's very encompassing in terms of the natural world and the outdoors and ecology and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just been a very gradual, very organic. I'm constantly learning and often don't know what I'm looking at, but in many ways that still doesn't detract at all from the joy of just experiencing it.
It's really nice to hear actually somebody saying that you can kind of enjoy nature without knowing all about it, and that surely has to help you as a science communicator, that you're kind of exploring and understanding these things at the same rate as the people you're talking to, and it's got to be helpful.
Yeah, completely, because I think I am really, really unknowledgeable in many ways, and I know I come across as knowing a lot, but actually I'm just good at research, and so are a lot of people. And going to university and doing a master's and stuff has been really helpful in teaching you how to kind of see a piece of information, assimilate it, pick out what's the most important thing to sort of glean from it, and then regurgitate it in a way that, can hopefully help people understand. And in many ways, part of what I write on social media or the articles I write and things is just kind of my process of learning about it myself, because 9 times out of 10, I don't know that much about the subject before I write about it. And I actually feel like I've learned more about ecology and the natural world and the wildlife around me through working and meeting people like yourselves who, are kind of in that space too. I think I learn a lot more from other people than I do from looking at books and things.
So Sophie, I first came across you, I guess it was almost a year ago now, when you were doing For Fox's Sake, the online quiz, which I really loved, and I sat there with my pencil and paper. Didn't do very well.
They were quite difficult questions, hence why I was a quiz master. I was good at making up the questions, But every time I was like, God, I'm so glad I'm not doing this myself.
And I know you fundraised for us as part of that, so thank you so much for that. That was really kind of
You're
you.
welcome. Yeah, no, it's a fun time, and I really wish I had more time to do more, and I keep being asked, but it just takes up a bit of time, and
putting it all together.
And
it's live as well, isn't it? So Hannah and I recently did our first ever live thing, like
different vibe,
months
isn't
ago.
It?
Totally different. It's like I can't delete the things that I
say. Hence why it became a drinking thing.
You can blame it on something.
Exactly, because the first time I did it, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. And so many people joined the first one. It was like nearly 400 people. I couldn't believe it. And
it is a lot of people.
Yeah, and they sort of stuck around as well for the whole hour. So I was very glad to have my glass of wine there to keep me company. But yeah, it was good fun. Hopefully it might come back in some way, but we'll see.
It's a really good way to communicate with people as well, because you're talking about that you're learning as you're going along. A quiz, even if people are getting things wrong, it's still a great way for you to do some science communication and communicate about wildlife with people and get people engaged with it as well, because it's just a bit of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so fun, and I think that kind of like has been the sort of, I guess, vibe that I've really tried to adhere to, because I have so many other interests besides sort of science and nature, one of which is comedy. And my brother and I used to like make up our own comedy skits and stuff, and big like proper old school comedy fans. And I think that I sometimes found science communication and natural history comms like it was missing something. And by no means am I saying that a quiz or something is the absolute answer, but I think I just tried to think, okay, how can we get more people interested in nature, break out of the echo chamber and just relate to people a bit more on their terms? People are feeling really low at the moment, especially in the last sort of year. And how can we get them excited about stuff? How can we relay the weirdest, wackiest side of nature? Because nature's hilarious. Many times just the stupidest things that we can't even imagine. And doing the quiz, I found kind of remotivated me a little bit. And I did it as much, I've said this many times before, I did it as much for me and sort of my mental health at those times, for everybody else than for everyone else. And the fact that I got so many messages from people saying that they genuinely looked forward to it and felt better after was really touching. And nice. I never imagined that it would have that effect. And I think, people love learning about nature, and perhaps we need to simplify it a little bit more and not overthink the way we communicate about it. And, stuff like podcasts have shown to be really effective because they kind of nail that kind of pop culture, easy listening, and that you're feeling like you're just hearing your friends chatting over a pint in the pub or something. And so it takes away the traditional learning aspect of it. And then you come away and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that so-and-so did that, or that bird did that. You kind of digest and you keep the information. It's like the classic, why do I remember gossip in a trashy magazine so much more than, whether this bird migrates from A to B or where it stops off and things like that, stuff that is genuinely important versus trashy gossip. But I think it's just the way that our information is presented in many ways.
I think you're right as well. It's been something that's on my mind a lot, especially over the last couple of weeks, actually, about how we get beyond the people who are already interested in that. Like people that listen to our podcast are wonderful listeners. They're amazing. But I would guess that the vast majority of them, they already love birds of prey and they already help wildlife. So us calling people to action to help out, we're kind of preaching to the converted. How do we break down that barrier and go, you there on the street who's never thought about planting some wildflower seeds, how do we get you to do that? How do we get you excited? And comedy, I think you're absolutely right. It's a great way to do that.
You definitely have to bring in other aspects. I think what you said about keeping it really simple as well is so important, because I think when we communicate about nature, we think, we've got to be really accurate and really complicated, and we've got to say all these different aspects about this. But no, that's not going to keep anyone engaged. You need to do snippets, like your some of your videos that you've done on YouTube, your 60-second wildlife videos are great, because they just
dreaded archives.
The dreaded archives. They just go for one subject and just give a really digestible fact or little piece of information, which is a really nice way to communicate, and using humour obviously is brilliant. But I was interested in your wild Cornwall study that you did. So was that for your master's dissertation?
Yeah, it was. So I did the Masters in Science Communication. So it's an MSc at UWE, University of West of England. And what I loved about that course in particular, and they're not paying me to say this, just big fans of how they teach the course, is they really, unlike a lot of science communication courses, and I know a couple of friends who've done a couple in London or the one in Liverpool, the ones at UWE really celebrate or give you breathing space to explore your creativity. Because I think they are very forward thinking in the way that they appreciate that just because you've come from a science background, and generally you do need a science degree to qualify for that master's, people are still creative. And they're not mutually exclusive, science and arts, and we know that now because there's so much research to show how much they really feed off of each other. And so I did a very, very labby research project in my undergrad, which was interesting, but it wasn't really my skill set. I find the lab quite intimidating, and statistics and stuff frighten me like nothing else. And so the opportunity to do something a little bit different was really tempting. And so my research question at the time, social media, Instagram, Facebook, everything was just kicking off like big time, because I think it coincided with the time of Blue Planet 2 and the whole conversation around plastic pollution. And I think people suddenly realise, oh wait, social media is actually an amazing tool to campaign for change, especially environmental change. And then we saw all of this incredible ripple effect of people talking about plastics as a result of the whale scene in Blue Planet 2. So that was a huge spark. And so my interest lay in sort of, well, how can we use social media better to communicate about these issues? And are people ready to hear those kinds of things on their social media platforms? How do we blend it so that it just sort of fits seamlessly into their current content on their feed and it doesn't stick out like a sore, boring thumb? So my question was, how can we do that? And instead of sort of going through, there wasn't any literature really on this. So the option of doing like a desk-based literature review was out of the question because there just was hardly any research. And so I thought, well, I really like hiking. I like wildlife. I like being outside. Quite like the idea of turning a project into a mini holiday. So I came up with the idea when I was on a walk, and I saw some seals in a bay, and I was on my phone with them, and then I looked up and I saw the sign and it said Minehead 430 miles, and I remember saying to my boyfriend, I was like, oh my gosh, imagine how demoralizing that would be if you were doing that walk and Minehead was your destination. And then it was like that planted a little seed. I was like, wait, how can we do that? How can we like share this glorious footpath with more people and communicate the wildlife en route? And then that sort of snowballed into let's walk around the whole of Cornwall, which was arguably the most stunning sort of middle of the sandwich of the Southwest Coast Path. And experiment with different platforms and take a video every day, upload it to social media, and then turn it into a research project by quantifying the different kinds of data that you gather. So the engagement data, and then also qualitative data, so comments and wordy things of people. And it kind of snowballed into it was 22, I think it was a while ago now, 2017, and it was 22-day long hike. Did 22 videos in real time, and
300 miles.
300 miles, yeah.
Wow.
In a heat wave, which was unexpected. And I just absolutely adored every single minute of it, and it was an insane amount of work because I was just using my phone to film and edit everything because I wanted it to be a relatable sort of endeavor that, look, you can see all of this and you can relay it to people just with the thing you've got in your pocket. You don't need any fancy camera equipment. We're not trying to achieve blue chip level production here. I certainly don't have any camera skills, really. I'm just good at using a free app. And and then it just sort of became something that I completely didn't expect. And then last year, my supervisor and I co-wrote a paper on it, and now it's in a scientific journal.
Yeah,
which
amazing.
is
Congratulations.
crazy.
Yeah,
Thank
brilliant.
you.
And then you carried on the hiking theme with Hannah Stipful on the...
I did, yeah.
Was it Hike for Wildlife?
It was Hiking for Nature.
Hiking for Nature.
For the Wildlife Trust. Yeah, so we sort of, it was a similar thing, but it was a bit harder because we shoved the same distance, so 300 miles, but a slightly different section of the route,
right,
into 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks.
Wow.
But we only had time to do that because we weren't filming and making stuff en route. We were literally just hiking to raise money for wildlife. So we were hiking around a marathon a day at times with 15 kilos on our backs, which was hard.
On consecutive days as well. That's
consecutive days. Yeah, it was a real. We both properly had to dig deep. I don't think I could have done it on my own, that one, because there was a lot of mental strength needed there. Yeah. And it helps that we get on very well. So.
Yeah. Do you have any other fundraising challenges or hiking challenges planned?
Interestingly, I was actually speaking to her yesterday, and we would like to do something this year. We were meant to be doing something last year, but obviously COVID got in the way. We just want to play it safe, obviously, with the restrictions, and whether we want to continue asking people to donate, because obviously people's pockets are a bit vulnerable at the moment. So but yeah, no, definitely we'd love to do something. Just need to figure out what that looks like. We're sort of thinking maybe like an extended long pub quiz. Maybe not, that might get out of hand.
Days long, days and days.
Exactly. 2-week long pub quiz.
So Sophie, beavers, you work closely with the Beaver Trust, which we've previously mentioned on the programme. Tell us what you do for the Beaver Trust.
So I am communications and campaigns coordinator. So I work very closely with the communications director, who's called Eva Bishop, and she's an amazing lady. And our mission is basically to educate people about beavers, because these animals haven't been here for 400 years, and there's an awful lot that is misunderstood about them, a lot of myths that need busting, and they're one of ecology's greatest teachers, I think, as an animal, in terms of what they do and the effect they can exert on an environment disproportionately to their numbers. And so it's just a fantastic sort of totem for talking about not just reintroductions, but also ecosystem restoration and just ecology as a whole. So we're trying to get people excited about beavers, but also make sure that excitement is well informed and not out of hand. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. But I love my job there.
I bet, yeah, including the Lodgecast. So you're a fellow podcaster as well, aren't you?
Fellow podcaster, yeah, like every other person in 2020. So we launched our first podcast in the early autumn last year, called the Lodgecast, and Eva and I present it, and each week we have a guest to just discuss anything from climate change to the latest one is with Roisin, who I mentioned earlier, who's a beaver ecologist, and she's probably the top expert in beaver ecology in Britain and responsible for a lot of the movement of beavers around the country. And so we were talking to her about beaver translocation and careers and conservation. And then we also have podcasts, with people who've seen their first beaver and how that felt and how exciting it was and things like that. So it's again, as you find, a really approachable medium to talk to people about conservation and these mammals in general.
I'm really looking forward to the restrictions being lifted so I can have that first moment of going to see a beaver in the wild. I'm so excited.
Oh, it is really special.
I also think congratulations are in order for the accolades that your film Beavers Without Borders achieved over the last few months. It was an amazing watch, really enjoyed it, and obviously gave us kind of a quick insight really into the work that's been done with beavers there. How was that to film?
That was an amazing experience. We never it sort of totally surpassed all of our expectations. So Nina Constable, who produced and directed and edited the film, she sort of was at the helm of this whole project and steered it in a way that was in line with all of the COVID restrictions, but still managed to make it a film that could be watched, 10 years from now, and you wouldn't know that it was filmed in 2020. And just that it was a huge labour of love and such a collaborative project. So there were lots of people in the film itself, but then so many more people behind the scenes who helped contribute to the script and locations and the story. And I think it just demonstrates how much of a people-based project beaver reintroduction is. And I think it's quite unique in that sense, because beavers really do overlap in their sort of environment, but then also their story. They're very much entwined with us in their past. So I think this film very much reflected that. But it was an amazing project and a real honour for me to be involved in it. And we're just so delighted that it seems to have resonated so positively with people.
So going back to the sort of SciComm side of things, Sophie, it obviously comes very naturally to you. I said I looked back over some of your older videos, and there is one particular one that we thought was quite amusing.
Oh no! Oh no!
That's the sound of someone who knows what's coming.
So what? Any reason why that one was so popular?
The water boatman and his trumpeting penis. Yes. So I think, the clue's in the name, really, isn't it? I think if you have anything phallic on YouTube, it's incredible clickbait. But I didn't do it for that. I think I knew it would be sort of probably more watched than an informed video about herring gull evolution. But I think it was more that I came across this fact and I was just like, how can an animal so tiny and boring looking, and something that we sort of just can have access to immediately if we want to, be a world record breaker for being the loudest animal relative to its size by the way that it courts a female? I just thought that was mad. I think it was more when I was kind of trying to experiment with, okay, what do people find? And this isn't anything revolutionary at all. This has been like knowledge for ages. People find things to do with sort of sex and beauty and health and fitness and all of those sorts of things trump nature any day in terms of popularity. So how can we merge the two? And it just so happens that the natural world has all sorts of raunchy, saucy materials that will engage people. But then, the amazing thing at the end is that it's a true story and it's happening now, and you've learned something.
So what would be your top tips to maybe other young people who might want to sort of get into science communication or improve their science communication?
It's just trial and error. I've learned through that and constantly still learning, things that I think might work really well sometimes bomb, or the other way around, things that I don't love but then sometimes resonate with people and do well. I think it's more about having confidence in why you're doing it in the first place. So why do you want to communicate science? And what is it about it that you want people to hear? And what's the message you're trying to get across? So I think it's starting from the very bare minimum of what got you interested in it in the first place? Where are your passions? Because I think it's very easy to get sort of lost in the very, often I find, intimidating world of social media, where everybody seems really expert, everyone seems to be really slick and at home in their craft, when actually most of us are just completely winging it. And so I think it's just about practicing, finding your voice, and trying very much to sort of stay true to you and your personality, and not trying to sort of feel like you've got to be a certain person or communicate in a certain way or phrase stuff in a way that perhaps isn't very natural to you. So there's a lot to be said for just practicing at home on your own. It may feel really weird and stupid. I still think talking to yourself and talking to your phone is the weirdest thing ever, but it's kind of the world we live in now. So be open to stuff, and there's an amazing sort of creative community on Instagram, especially with this sort of stuff. So just put it out and see what people think. And I think if you are not enjoying it and you end up feeling like it's just a lot of work and you're feeling pressured and you're getting stressed, might be a sign that particular mode of communication is not for you.
So you've done this like worldwide as well, haven't you? Overseas, you've done science communication. I was reading in Hong Kong. Is that right?
Oh wow! Yeah, you have done your research.
That's right.
Yeah, no. That was a really good. That was a really fun few weeks. So I got an amazing opportunity with Hugh James, who's an amazing science communicator and educator in his own right, based in Wales, and then Ty Aziz, who I did my master's with and is now a TV researcher for Netflix Natural History, which is awesome.
Wow.
If you ever want a guest, you should definitely talk to her.
Oh, great.
And yeah, she's so cool. And so the three of us went out to Hong Kong, 50 schools or something around Hong Kong, teaching them science communication and celebrating their science festival, working with the Science Museum. And that was an amazing experience. And yeah, I think you're right. I think it shows that sort of science communication is a global thing, and that often we can get so sucked into our little localized patch, which is important to promote and important to get stuck into. But, you know, there are millions of people all over the world who need to hear these messages. And, you know, we're all connected by the same sort of earth, if that's not too hippie to say. And all these issues, especially things like climate change, you know, will affect all of us. So
you're a writer as well as a in-person science communicator on social media and through videos. I think you've written for BBC Wildlife and Country Farm magazine and all sorts, and now you're kind of embarking on your own journey to produce your own literature as well, aren't you? Can you tell us anything about your upcoming book?
Yes, I can. So it is a non-fiction narrative, and it's called Forget Me Not, and it's about a journey. It's about 10 different journeys that I take around the UK over the last year. I've still got 2 more to do, and as we speak, and to see 10 species and habitats that I believe are A, massively overlooked by the British public and by science in many ways, and B, habitats and species that have a particular climate change story to tell, so are either going to be at risk from climate change, which is unfortunately the trend, or perhaps might fare well out of it. But either way, the sort of moral of the story is making the most of the amazing collection of habitats and species that we've got here in Great Britain before they might go, and hopefully that we won't sort of forget them. So that's been it's the pandemic was not on the cards when I got the commission.
No.
But that's actually been an interesting sort of side narrative to the story, because obviously now we're learning that the pandemic perhaps arose as a result of our exploitation of the land and us sort of losing control of that. And so that's an interesting sort of it relates a little bit to some of the stories in there. But
it sounds exciting. I look forward to reading it.
It's really exciting. Thank you.
When can we get one?
It's heating up now that I'm in the very sort of tense last few months of writing. So end of July I have to hand it in. And then spring 2022 is apparently when it's unleashed.
Exciting.
Thank you.
What's your best wildlife moment that you've had so far?
This is easy, and it happened. This is easy because it happened last year. And if we're discounting beavers, then it makes it easier. So last spring, in the middle of lockdown, and I didn't have any work at the time, so I was incredibly bored, and I was just like, oh, what should I do? What should I do? And I was like, you know what? I really want to see a cockchafer, i.e. maybug. And I was like, I've never seen one before. It seems like every other person on Twitter is boasting about their maybugs and their cockchafers, and I haven't seen one. And I set up a sort of moth, I know they're beetles, but I set up a moth trap of sorts in my garden with a white sheet and some torches. And I did a big like spiel on Instagram about it. I was like, oh, tonight I'm on mission cockchafer. I'm going to find one. It gets dark and I don't see anything. And then I'm in my room getting ready to have a shower. And I hear this amazing racket. And they're so noisy because there's enormous beetles. They're like the UK's biggest scarab beetle or something like that. So when they sort of clash into stuff, it's really loud. It sounds like something's fallen down the side of a bedside table or something. And anyway, I was like, that's a weird noise. And then I'm in bed getting ready to go to sleep. And then all of a sudden this cockchafer just emerges out the back of the picture behind my bed. And I just see its antennae just flicking at the top of the picture. Just like, I don't know whether this is really creepy or really coincidental, but I set up an entire moth sort of mecca in my garden that was still there, had my window open, and the blooming cockchafer went into my bedroom instead.
Wow.
And I've never
brilliant.
seen one since. So of all, on the day I decided, and this never happens, wildlife famously hates me and I never see anything. On the day I wanted to see a cockchafer, turns up in my bedroom over my bed. That's by far the best wildlife encounter. So that's that one.
You've answered that question faster than anybody we've ever asked that question to. Like,
Oh,
we asked it
good.
of ourselves ages ago and we were like, oh God, what's it going to be? Like, I've no idea what to pick. But yeah, excellent.
British wildlife never fails to put on a show.
Okay, so lastly, what would be your one message to people out there who want to support nature?
I think even if you feel like it's not going to make a difference, it really will. Doesn't matter how small your action is or how infrequently you do it. The fact that you've decided that you care about something enough to act about it is, I think, the biggest hurdle. And then everything from that point is going to make a massive difference, whether you feel like it is or not. It will or not.
Wise words indeed. That makes me feel better about my tiny wildflower patch in the garden now. It seems
well, there you
small.
go. That's amazing. And like I really truly think that the biggest hurdle at the moment is the human mindset. And once you change that, stuff will happen. But it seems we're incredibly stubborn creatures. And yeah, I think we need to get over ourselves a bit.
Well, that was amazing, Sophie. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it's really lovely to chat to you. Really nice to
hear
about everything you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, it's good to meet you, and we'd love to welcome you, obviously, at the Trust when we're allowed to do so. Show you around and
thank
talk
you.
to you about birds of prey for the day.
It was brilliant to chat to Sophie, wasn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it was great, and Sophie's got a great sense of humour, and that was what kind of really stuck out to me when first encountering her doing the quizzes during the first lockdown. And just a completely different way of communicating the natural world. It's interesting, actually, what she said about how we kind of get beyond the bubble. We exist in this bubble of being passionate about wildlife and nature, and how do we get to those people that are not really that bothered about it, because we need those people on board as well. We need most of us, don't we, to be on board with looking after wildlife and nature and being enthused about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I reckon it's probably time for this month's top tip.
Migratory birds like swifts, martins and swallows will soon be returning back from their winter migration to breed in the UK. They can travel epic distances from as far as sub-Saharan Africa, so our top tip this month is to lend them a hand when they return. Special nest boxes for swifts and artificial cup nests for swallows and martins, when correctly positioned, can be a huge help to breeding birds. Swift nests can even be incorporated into new buildings. You could leave a muddy puddle in your garden or a muddy patch next to your pond, or even some wet mud in a dustbin lid to help swallows and martins build their nests.
So that's it for April. We're excited that, all being well, the Trust will finally be able to open its doors once more very soon. So if you haven't already, maybe consider booking a ticket to come and see us and all of the wonderful birds that live here.
It is an exciting time. I'm very hopeful that we are on our way to a slightly more normal year. A quick reminder of our Matter of Fact challenge. You can vote for either Tom's orangutan or, even better, obviously, my giant Pacific octopus on our Instagram stories or our poll on Twitter.
You won't win them over that easily, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have enjoyed this episode, there's loads more where that came from, so don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss out on an episode.
If you'd like to know more about anything we've talked about in today's show, then head over to our social media pages where you'll find our blog that accompanies this podcast and loads more insights. Just search at Hoot Conservancy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube.
Next month we'll be joined by conservation ecologist Dr. Georgia Jones, who works on studying kestrels and their diets in the wild.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one.
We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.